about some stats in the collection industry, and I think you're going to like these. And number one is most collection industries average about 20% delinquent debt. Now, better than 30% that it was a few years ago. So what does that mean to you? Well, what it means to you is that 20% or 25% of most customers are going to be late in their collections or making payments. So you can't take it personal. Even if you had 250 good customers in your pool or your portfolio, you have to understand that 20 to 25% of those customers are going to make their payments late. You know, I've heard this, that 25% of people in our country, they were born late, which means they have late payments. And you can't take it personal. So you have to understand 25% are going to be late. Number two, the debt collection industry will experience a 23% growth by 2016. So what does that tell you? Does that mean credit's going up or credit's going down? No, credit's going down. There's a credit thief in America or Canada or wherever you're at, and they seem to be stealing people's credit scores. Now, what happens to these people? Well, there's good people with bad credit, and I guess there's bad people with bad credit. But a lot of these people, what ends up happening is they lose their job, they get fired, something happens in their life, they spend more money than they have, and the next thing you know, they can't make their payments. You ever been in that situation? Or do you know somebody like that? Probably about 250 couples. Okay. Number three, agencies nationwide reported, listen to this one, now listen up, $40 billion in all of collections. Now we're just not talking about the automotive industry, but in every industry where there's collections, $40 billion wasn't collected. Yeah, I said 40 billion. You're probably wondering, what happened? Well, I'll tell you what, the customer wasn't obligated to the collector wasn't good enough, and there's just some people that things happen in their life where they're just not gonna pay. So we are going to lose a ton of money. Well, how do you guard that money? You guard it with your skills. You see, if you have good skills, collector, then you'll be able to pay your bills. If you have great skills, you'll be able to win the awards in your dealership and be the top collector. You know, if you look at the top collectors in any industry, what do they have? Number one, they have desire, they have skill, they have passion, and they're ready to go. Three, 26% of Americans don't pay their bills on time. That, again, 26%. So what does that tell you? Well, if you had 100 customers, 25% or 26% aren't going to pay on time. Some people think that buy here, pay here is a rip-off lot. It's not a rip-off lot. Listen, these people put themselves in that position, and it's our job to encourage them to rebuild their life, their credit, and get the car they deserve. How do you do that? With great skills. You gotta understand people, and you gotta solve people's problems. That's what collections is. How about this one right here? The national average for customers who are 1 day late is about 22%. Now that's the customer you got to get on top like a hobo on a ham sandwich. Seriously, when that customer is 1 day late, you got to jump on it that quick, because if not, that pattern will go to 5 days, 15 days, 30 days. Now you got a bad habit customer, and you know what that means. It spells disaster. 70% of most collectors in dealerships have been there over 2 to 5 years. What does that mean to you? There's turnover. We need to stop that. This one, and I'm going to wrap it up on this module, 10% of the customers in most collectors' pools do not get called on. Now, why is that? Well, they were a good loan, then it went south, and the next thing you know, the collector says, well, I don't have time to get to it, I can't get to them, and you know what? You're going to start developing bad habits. So how do you get control of your pool? You got to stay in touch with your customer. You got to get to the references, you got to get to that customer, you got to get verbal commitments out of them, and then you got to get a commitment from them to show up when you ask them to. One last tip. Before I wrap this up, don't forget, leave a compelling voicemail message so that your customer calls you back. Don't just roll through the phone like it's another phone call. In other words, don't just be monotone and unexcited. If that's the case, we ought to just get a recording and then send it to 100 customers. I can't tell you how many dealerships I've been in and seen collectors just make a call after call after call to say, oh, I made my 80 calls today. Each call is important.